What's the deal, y'all? So back with another one, episode of the Give Your Life to Bitcoin podcast. I'm gonna work on that intro a little bit, but you know, you see what direction we starting to head. It's only gonna get better and better from here. But as always, co-host Cav in the building. What's the deal with you, Cav? What's going on, man?
Feeling good, man.
Hey, I appreciate you joining me, man, for another spiritual Bitcoin talk this evening, another fireside chat, if you will.
hmm
Um, just want to bring a little energy, man, to this tonight's discussion. We got a couple of topics that I know is kind of been heavy on our hearts these last couple of days, and mainly because a lot of these topics we can absolutely relate to. It's the whole reason that we chose Bitcoin in the first place. So just want to kind of bring the audience in on what we've been seeing out there, what we've been thinking has been relevant to bring to light and kind of discuss. And this first one, man, this first topic, I'm just gonna pull it up on the screen here, man, bring it to the stage so y'all can check this out. So, read a study that says young adults in the US spend over 30% of their paychecks in the first 12 hours and nearly half of their paychecks within 48 hours. This is a very sad reality here. Um, I've been there before. I know exactly what it's like. The reality is most of us are still asleep. Most of our young people are definitely going to be devastated by the shit that's about to shift in this economy because of inflation alone. Like the way that inflation is set up. Like I'm always stressing, like it's dramatically shifted our lifestyles as family and as cultures. But like, especially amongst our young people, thinking that they can just live life willy nilly and think that they're going to get away without any scrapes and bruises. So what we're seeing right now, with what that study suggests, is these young people's income is getting wiped out, and I don't know what kind of bills these people are paying. Outside of giving their parents a couple of dollars here and there. But the reality is, no matter what income level you're at, whether you make $1 million a year, 10,000 a year, 30,000 a year, you're going to be affected by what we're seeing out there. And so I'm curious, Kat, what's your thoughts, brother? Like as far as just how inflation has not only impacted wealthy individuals, but what you call the middle class and also lower class individuals as well, even going down to fucking homeless people.
Thanks, man. Well, first off, when it comes to that statistic, I know I'm definitely in there right now myself. I humbly admit that. That's why I live a minimalist lifestyle like I do now, on top of the job I'm working at currently. Yeah, man, it's bad out there. You know, First we have to address the reason for this inflation and why so many young adults, especially, are seeing their paychecks and their income wiped out to bills alone, before they start spending frivolously for those that do. This all goes back to reckless money printing on the government's part. You do have things like corporate greed and things like that, but most of this goes back to government policy. And government policy, I might add, that has been this way for a long time, since our parents were kids, since their parents were kids. You have the up and down of recessions in our society that all go back to things such as banking policies and government policies. Like I say, those two things play a part in us seeing the things we do now amongst the younger crowd, and amongst everybody. We can't act like people haven't been living paycheck to paycheck before. This, I was hearing about that when I was a kid. When I was 15, many Americans are starting to live paycheck to paycheck. Now we're just really seeing it amongst many different demographics. One of the things that I see out of this is an opportunity of humility, and to really put our dollars to work towards something that'll help us get out of this situation, so that we don't have to keep going through this. Which is why myself, I said, well, you know what, since my paycheck is gonna get wiped out anyway, and I'm gonna spend it on something. I don't go out, I don't hang out, don't really have any vices. I only spend on what I need to survive anyway, and I pay my bills ahead of time. I'm getting out of debt. So I said, well, why don't I put it towards something that really matters, instead of just coming home, going to work, coming home, going to work, and just paying bills. I said, well, let me pay off this debt first, and let me invest in Bitcoin, which is why I started, really increasing my contribution to my dollar cost averaging every week to my Bitcoin investment. I said I might as well put this towards something, and why not put it towards, like we say all the time, especially how you put me on to your catchphrase. Why have the second best when you can have the best thing, the number one thing, the number one investment that is changing the guard in our society, and that is Bitcoin. So that's one thing I would suggest people out there to jump head first into and say, you know what, like I said in the previous episode, I'm not saying to give up totally everything, but give all of yourself into an investment that you know is going to pay off in the long run through these economic downturns, through the recession that we're in, through these hardships. And you have that sense of that peace of mind knowing that, well, my paycheck's gone, but I know at least part of it is going towards something that matters. I'm not just a machine going to work for an even bigger machine. I'm doing something that I can be proud of at the end of the day when I come home, take my shoes off, shower, and everything. And in the long run, when we get through these economic hardships, even though they're always going to keep coming, you'll have that sense of fulfillment. Like, you know what? Look at your investment, look at your wallet. Well, at least I did something that matters, and that's the mindset that I have currently in these economic conditions that we have in terms of what I'm putting my money towards through the rise in inflation.
Absolutely, man. I think you fucking nailed it, bro. We've all been there before, you know, especially, if you came from nothing, you know what it's like to grind so hard, to get to that payday, only for it to mean nothing. You're trying to survive for the next week or the next 2 weeks. But as young adults, as this post referred to, as young adults, you have a lot more leeway living with your parents. You can afford to kind of blow your money a little bit and then bum
Mhm.
off them until you get paid again.
Been there, done
But
that.
as you get older, and you repeat this process in and out, you repeat it over and over, and you realize that something is broken and something needs to be fixed. And a lot of times we don't go looking for the solution until we realize we have a problem. And I think, right now as a young adult, you have a lot of time left. With a broken money system, you might not believe that, but you have a lot of time left to start focusing right now on how can you, like you said, how can I put these dollars to work for me so I don't have to work for dollars? The whole purpose of this Bitcoin experiment is to actually get away from dollars. But for the time being, obviously, we understand we still have to work with it to some capacity to pay our bills and other legal affairs and legal commitments that we have. But we need to try to figure out how we can start living a Bitcoin based lifestyle. And one of the things I've been doing in my personal life is for our services, for our photography, videography services, I haven't completely forced my clients to pay me in Bitcoin, but I've been offering some serious incentives. Whereas you might have to pay us $3,000 cash for a wedding videography film of 5 minutes. Paying us in Bitcoin, you only have to pay us 2,500. So right there, I'm saving you $500 up front. But you
Hmm.
have to be curious enough to ask, okay, well, what is it, and how do I obtain it, and how do I send it to you? That's all I want you to do. That's the whole purpose of this. On top of me giving you even more value, saving you $500. Now, in the long run, you will have given me maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, up front, I'm trying to save you some value to at least get you to ask, okay, well, what the fuck is it? And that's exactly what happened to us back in July, onboarding a new couple who were getting married in August, and I offered them a upfront discount if they chose to pay us in Bitcoin, and I told them I would walk them step by step through the process, and they got curious and they wonder why. And we will always get the credit as a brand for even just bringing that to their attention, forcing new users into the network instead of inconveniencing ourselves. Okay, you give us the money and we'll go buy Bitcoin. Maybe it makes no sense because, if I would have let them pay me cash, I would have been able to buy more Bitcoin. But this is where the brand has an opportunity to give back. And yes, it's going to cost us dollars, but the whole purpose is to get people thinking in that direction. Because how else do we move into hyper Bitcoinization if we don't all, as individuals, as service providers, companies, corporations, start demanding our compensation in it? And even as an employee, you need to start demanding your compensation from your employers. It don't matter if they say no. They can say no. The point is you're planting the seed. You're
Mm.
doing your day in and day out part to get people to at least start thinking in that direction. So they can say, hey, you know what? Well, Cordell did ask us years back, or days ago, weeks ago, if he could get compensated in Bitcoin. Is that something we need to start looking into as a company? Look at what just happened with JP Morgan Chase, right? You had companies like you had talking heads like Jamie Dimon basically saying that Bitcoin was a bad investment, it was rat poison or whatever.
Hmm.
And he's entitled to his opinion, but barely a year later they're doing a full 180. They completely reversed their stance on it because their customers are demanding Bitcoin based products, and they had to capitulate. If the customers are demanding it, then you backed into a corner. And so
Mm.
JP Morgan, along with various other banks, Vanguard included, that investment fund, are now offering Bitcoin based products because they're being forced by their consumers. So this is a consumer driven marketplace. And once the world wakes up to what Bitcoin actually is, there's going to be a higher demand and an ever shrinking supply. And that changes everything.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially by the time we're in our 40s, which isn't that long away. It's not that far away. You know, like they say, you'll be 40 before you know it. And me myself, I'm 31, and I never would have thought I'd see today. I remember when I first heard about Bitcoin from my classmate, and that was in 2011, 2012. It was only a couple $100. Now we're seeing it at 82,000, so it'll be a million before we know it, right before our eyes. You know what I'm saying? It's just a snap. And so you hit it on the head when you said that these seeds have already been planted and we're seeing them grow already. And so it's just going through stages, which is why we have to reiterate, to anyone out there watching, you know, the revolution has already been happening. People always say, when is it going to start? It's already happening. It's just going through different stages. It's just like when a snake sheds its skin, it has to grow a little bit, come out of it, grow a little bit, come out of it. It's just going to keep on going. And right before you know it, you're going to see more and more companies, whether that be everything from Walmart to Quicken Loans, offering their employees to get paid in Bitcoin. And even it'll be an incentive for the companies to start paying their employees in Bitcoin. It'll do what I think a lot of companies will see this as an opportunity to retain good employees once they see how they like getting paid, or at least partially paid in Bitcoin. I think this will help a lot of companies out, and those that don't adapt are going to face major challenges.
Man, I'm glad you just brought that up because, obviously, I wanted to talk about how, Bitcoin is going to have an impact on the young adults in society and the inner city communities. And like you said, I think that probably will start at an employment level. That probably will start with, us demanding it from our employees or employers. And basically, you're only going to work for the employer that is able or have the capital capacity, the financial capacity to be able to pay you what you're asking for in Bitcoin. But in order for them to do that, they're going to have to accumulate it as an entity. So you're talking every single company, every big Fortune 500 company having to fight to have a stockpile of Bitcoin to be able to pay their employees in it.
Hmm.
Now, keep in mind, we obviously know what facet of this whole transition we're in, and we understand that AI is actually actively replacing the need for human beings. But even though that's the case, you still will need humans, at least from a maintenance standpoint, for a lot of these jobs that will be available in the future. But obviously, you still got the healthcare sector, nurses and doctors, people who can help you on like a personal level or a most or more social level, social studies, social work, even like beauty and technician departments like barbers. It's going to be a while before we trust the robots to cut our hairs and give us
Hmm.
lineups and make us laugh and have good conversations. But again, it will start that process of figuring out, okay, who's really getting it around here, because there's only going to be so much credit or leverage that companies are able to use to buy Bitcoin and be able to issue that Bitcoin out to their employees. Because when you start paying in Bitcoin, you're going to have your own stockpile. You don't want to have nothing you built off leverage, simply because when those margin calls are due, that credit needs to be paid. Whatever you borrow needs to be put back. And so you don't want to be pulling from whatever capital you have set aside to pay employees, because you need to pay back said credit. So this is going to really expose the companies that's out here like really making shit happen and really have the capital capacity to be able to run a full blown business, paying their employees with Bitcoin. So I think that's going to change everything.
Right. It's no different from how the U.S. government and the powers that be, they say the power behind the throne, behind the curtain, they're already planning to get people onto the Fed coin, U.S. bank digital currency they've been trying to roll out over the past few years. It's coming, so it'll be no different from that. But Bitcoin will be like the antithesis to their system, which is why I tell people, especially in our communities in the inner city, that getting used to a Bitcoin system, an everyday Bitcoin system in your community is a must. And you don't want to get left behind, not from a superficial perspective, but you think about it like,
Hmm.
okay, well, if this is becoming the norm, and like I say, the government is going to have their own system to make it hard for you. So we, the people, we're going to have to develop our own system to make it hard for them. But it's kind of funny because if you don't get on either, your life is going to be very difficult because all across the world they've been phasing out physical money. They want to institute their own digital currency so that it's easier to track us. This is no conspiracy that I'm talking about. They've said this in many of their different articles they put out, many of their white papers, as you could say, similar to Bitcoin, but they say it in a less malevolent tone. But we all know that's what it's going to do. So, like I say, you have to get used to these new systems. Like I say, this is a conflict. This is a war we're talking about, and you have to choose what side you're going to be on. Are you going to be on the side that submits, or are you going to be on the side that resists? Both sides are going to have their own challenges and difficulties, but you figure at least I'm over here and I got over here during the right time when it was easier, as opposed to, like you say, whoever buys Bitcoin, whatever price, that's what they deserve to buy it at. But a lot of us would like to buy it at a time where, like you say, okay, at least I got a good standing in the game. And so, similar to the old system, I'm up here instead of being down here because I got into it at a time when it was slightly easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually read something earlier today that said right now, if you are to buy at least 0.01 Bitcoin right now, based off where we are in the S curve cycle, it will be the equivalent to basically buying a full Bitcoin back in 2017, before Bitcoin skyrocketed to all time highs at that point. And so right now is a good time for us to stress to everybody how powerful their dollars really are. Right now, your dollar is as strong as it will ever be. We're sitting around waiting on the day to come where, we can go back to the store with a dollar and be able to get 4 bags of chips for that $1. Those days are long gone and they are never coming back. And you can let go of any parallel reality where you think that's even a possibility. You can go ahead and throw that out. The US dollar is dead in the water and it will never come back. So we can hang that up. The only thing that we can do now is wrap our heads around the implications and consequences of that reality. And the higher Bitcoin goes, the weaker your dollar is. So when Bitcoin has these price swings back to the downside, you need to be thanking God. That's really what it is. It's a gift from the Most High to give you another opportunity with those weak ass dollars in your hand to actually make something of them. So you're trading a piece of something that's temporary. You're trading a liability for a piece of eternity. What's what's the value of forever? You can't really put a price on it. So if you go on Coinbase right now, and Coinbase tell you that Bitcoin is worth $90,000, well, that's their opinion of it. Their opinion is that it's worth $90,000. When you really sit back and dive deep into what the fuck this thing really does, Cat, like I try to stress this to my colleagues and people that I work with, and it's nothing that can be done in a single conversation. But when you really sit back and look at what this thing does and say to yourself, well, okay, well, it's eliminating the option to use violence to confiscate wealth from other people. That's what we've done throughout human history. We've just went in territories where the opponent might have been weaker, slaughtered them, extracted their resources, conquered the land. Um, it's reducing the need to be physically present. A lot of people still prefer cash, but the inconvenience with cash is that I have to be physically present to spend it.
Hmm.
It is reducing the need for trust. Back in the day when we used to barter and trade, especially if we were still using gold, you didn't necessarily trust every brick of every piece of gold that got handed to you. There were things or verification processes that you had to put the gold through. Like some people would bite it, and based off of how it bent when you bought it, when you bit into it, would tell you if it was real gold or not. Some people used to throw it at the ground and listen for a specific sound. But there are several verification methods to be able to determine if gold is real, that we used to have to abide by, basically. So with Bitcoin, fuck all of that. I don't need to try to sit up and verify. The system is taking care of that from jump. So the need to verify is even thrown out the window. There is an ungodly amount of benefits as far as getting all of my time back that I sacrificed to be able to even accumulate the resources or the dollars that I've accumulated. I'm actually putting it now into a battery that's going to protect the energy and time that I had to sacrifice to obtain these dollars or these resources.
Hmm.
And not a lot of people are enraged at the fact that all your effort and time can be wiped out and siphoned away from you because of someone else's greed or need to stay in power. So this is like a huge talking point when it comes to like why this whole Bitcoin thing is important in the first place, and how it's going to change our day-to-day lifestyles, and how it's going to affect our cultures and our inner city communities. uh right now there's a culture of flashing money and flashing jewelry and expensive material things, but when we realize that all the value is in this protocol that don't even exist in reality, like you can't hold it, you can't see it, so it's all in our head. Once people realize that all of the value is there in that cyber world, then all of the value of the material things that we can hold up and be seen by the eye is going to deplete. Value is going to be distracted out of those things and be put into this digital protocol that protects the value of everything. So when you ask, okay, what backs Bitcoin? Nothing. Bitcoin is the backer. It backs everything.
Yes. You mentioned something about how people, flash money. We've all been there. We want to be known as human beings. We want status, things of that nature. And oftentimes we do it with physical things. Jewelry is a common thing, especially in the Black community. The car you drive, different things you have. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff is like, it is nice. Like, who doesn't want, like me? I like James Oro glasses, or as I call it, the Cardi Killers. Very inexpensive, great quality, and they look very nice, and they get the same feeling as if you're wearing a pair of Cartiers. But then it makes you think, it's like, in terms of what really matters, the long term, yeah, anybody can buy a pair of glasses. But like I said, there'll come a day where Bitcoin is at $1 million per coin. And like we've stated, those who have it, their lives will be easier. Those who don't, their lives will be very difficult. And that's going to be the new status symbol. And even before that, when you say like having a great credit score, not being in debt, owning your home, these things are the things that really matter, the things that show true status because they show commitment, they show focus, they show drive. Because to get all of these things, like I said, the government doesn't want us to own homes. That's why they've allowed mega corporations to buy them up. That's why I say all of these conditions are caused by government policies so that a select few corporations can benefit, because it's easier to work with a small handful of corporations instead of millions of Americans who have a voice, the mom and pop shops, what have you. So
Mhm.
Bitcoin is a thing that's going to be the new status symbol for a lot of people, especially when it comes to fighting this fight of financial freedom against the powers that be. Like you say, all those guys flashing money at the club, it makes you think about different economic crashes in different countries, especially socialist countries. Venezuela, for example, there are videos you can look up right now of people, with barrel fulls of money. You think it's a AI video, but it's not. I remember when the crisis in Venezuela first started happening, people have been breaking into zoos, eating zoo animals because, the money has become worthless through years of corruption, reckless money printing, and government policy. And like I say, people have tens of millions of Venezuelan pesos and they're going into the stores coming out with one piece of bread. That's ridiculous and it's very sad. And that also shows what happens when you have so much trust in the government or in a government period, whether that's here in America, South America, Europe, Australia, whatever. The founding fathers, they understood this. That's why they created the Constitution, because they knew that, well, first they understood human nature. Like that old saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. They understood this principle. So that's why they created the Constitution, to give the people a fighting chance, not for if the government turns tyrannical. They knew that one day our government would become tyrannical, but they put this piece of paper, this document, what they all agreed on. They all agreed on these principles to say, hey, this will give the people a fighting chance. So you could consider Bitcoin the new financial constitution for the working class. Say, look, this right here is going to give us a fighting chance, because we know this is going to happen. The government is not going to stop. They're not going to hear us out. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to eventually become tyrannical, because that's human nature. We've let them, through years of being complacent, we've let them get more and more powerful, whether it be with certain laws, drug policy, whether it be with however you feel about the abortion debate, with all of these different facets of human life and everyday life in our society. We've just handed over the power. You got to think about it. The founding fathers, early settlers, were getting taxed however much percent. Back then we get taxed federal income tax, state income tax, sales tax at the store, property tax, which is crazy. Like, you're charging your own citizens basically to live in this country, and we're not doing anything about it at all. Most people aren't. We're just giving in to the system. We're feeding the monster of consumerism. And that's another thing I believe Satoshi Nakamoto, like, he understood. He said, he understood human nature. I think that's a huge driving force behind why he created Bitcoin. He knew that there would be people who would eventually, you know, give up their power, take advantage of people giving up that power. But he also knew there are people who are going to resist. Like Dave Chappelle said, that, like, he's a natural dissenter. He knew people were going to want to fight once they truly understood the system. Like Henry Ford said, if people truly understood the system, there'd be a revolution by tomorrow morning. The key is having the proper tools to fight in that revolution, to fight in that war. And that's what I believe Satoshi, and what it clearly is, what he said, what, this is what it's going to be right here. This will give the people a fighting chance, because every day I can feel the desperation in the air. When I ride the bus, when I'm at work, people don't outright say it, but you can hear it in certain conversations. You can feel the energy. Like, people want something, they want an answer. The scary part is that most are still looking in the wrong places. You think, well, if I just work more hours, well, yeah, you got to work overtime, get extra money. But like you say, when your when your money is just sitting in your savings account, it's really losing value. You're doing exactly what the government wants you to do, or whether you're investing it in, looking good, which has its place. But it's like, you think you have all of these different things, but they're not really pushing you ahead. And that's what Bitcoin is. I'm telling everybody out there, it's like you have to focus on the one thing that matters. Remember, you are a soldier in this war. I mean, you can choose to be, or you can just, lay down and submit. There's that option too, but you have to be willing to accept what comes with that option on both sides.
This whole thing is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you're the government, you ask, okay, well, right, I see, they're trying to create their own currency. They're trying to get from underneath our thumbs with the very thing that gives us control. The reason that these governments are so powerful, and you know this, is because we rely on them so much. If there's a person you rely on, even in like relationships in your life, male female dynamics, whoever relies on the other, you give them all of the leverage. You if you move in with a spouse and you're completely dependent on that spouse, you give them all of the leverage. You give them leverage to make the rules and tell you when you can come and go, and
Kick you out.
kick you out, give you permission to do as you please. Like, that's not a position to be in. And so the more we rely on governments to take care of us first and foremost. I mean, I grew up with a mom who relied on government assistance and had no incentive whatsoever to outgrow or outpace the need for that government assistance. It was just mad convenient. I mean, my mom still utilizes government assistance to this day. And it's so degrading to growth because they don't want you to grow. A lot of the ways that a lot of these programs are set up, it's anti-growth. It's like we dare you to try to make something of yourself and watch how fast we cut you from these programs. And it's really unfair and it's really severe, the consequences of that and the type of mind that it molds. And it's teaching our women to become more dependent on the very thing that empowers these governments in the first place. And so, with that being the case, do you think that we are going to be more likely to adopt Bitcoin or more likely to adopt stable coins when the governments tell us, okay, we give you permission to utilize these as your day-to-day currency, and pay your bills with it, pay your taxes with it, buy goods and services, pay employees and contractors with it. We give you permission to utilize this. um, because the government said it, I fear that there's a possibility people could more openly adopt stable coins, particularly like government issued stable coins, before they actually adopt Bitcoin. There are people who still have that much fucking faith in the government, and that's scary.
You're absolutely right. I believe like the 80-20 rule, 80% of people probably are going to just adopt the stable coins. With the same system you said, with your business, is that if they don't force people to use it, they're going to heavily incentivize people to use it, which is basically coercion. Let's just call it for what it is. It's coercion through government policy. And most people are going to do it, even when they know they deep down, I can't trust these people, but I don't really want to make the sacrifice and stand up for myself to do something else because I'm already used to this system, even though I want to change, which is what most people go through. I felt that throughout my life. As humans, we've all been at that moment to where we complain and our lives are messed up. A lot of it through our own choices or through some outside system, and we do want to change, but a lot of us aren't willing to make the change until shit hits the fan and our back is against the wall. And some people don't survive. I've had that in my life. I've been at a crossroads to where I say, look, am I going to sink or swim? Am I going to really make a change for my life so that I can be better than the men before me and my family? Or am I just going to keep doing the same old shit? How many times do I have to bump my head? How many cuts and bruises do I have to get? Not towards anything of value, but towards something that's continues to hurt me. A lot of people will be faced with this. A lot of people are faced with this now. I was faced with it, but that's why I'm investing in Bitcoin now, and telling people who want to hear it, who actually do want a better way out of the financial spider web, the monetary spider web that has been placed before us, that we found ourselves in since the day we were born. It's not easy, but I do tell people it is worth it. And we have to stick together in this fight, outside of, class, race, or anything. This is the fight that truly unites us, that will unite the people who do want to make a new system, the people who want to change our society for the better. And like I say, it's going to be rough. It already is rough, but it is worth it. I feel bad for the people who are going to choose the government stable coins over Bitcoin. But then, I have to understand that is their free will. I don't hate those people. I don't look down on those people. They're just doing what they know. But me and you are just doing what we've come to know. And that's how I look at it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, we're all pretty much on point in the same ballpark with how we look at this thing. And again, like you said, people got their own free will. They can make the decision on whether or not they want to choose freedom or choose confinement. I've been trying to actively pull people out of this jail, and some days I just want to cry. Some days I feel chosen because the work, the amount of work that it took me to get to the level of conviction that I've reached, I know for a fact some people will not make it through that journey. They say sometimes to get to freedom you got to be willing to crawl through 100 yards of shit like Andy Dufresne.
Mhm.
you know, you got to crawl through a lot of shit to get on the other side of this. When you get to the other side of this, man, it is something so beautiful. Being orange peel cat, being reborn, being baptized into a new faith, there is nothing more refreshing, bro, because it wasn't just too long ago where I was contemplating committing suicide myself. That wasn't long ago at all. And I think that's why a lot of people are so just fucking are such misfits and just tyrants just in society, just frivolous scoundrels. They're just so entitled because they never been hurt before. They never felt real pain before. And when stuff don't go their way one time, they're panicking. Like my 3-year old, if he don't get his way, it's the end of the fucking world. And it's like, bro, relax, man. Take a deep fucking breath. You'll be okay. But when hope is absent, you can't say that to a person. Nobody wanna hear that it's gonna be okay shit. It's like, no, take me out. I don't want to feel this pain no more. I want to feel numb. And I
Mhm.
get it. A lot of people are aiming to try to feel numb. But with Bitcoin, it's such a rebirth that it actually makes you want to live. It makes you want to see tomorrow. It allows you to even be able to envision a better tomorrow if something like this could possibly exist for all of us. And I need to be more grateful that I'm one of the people who understand that right now. What I'm trying to do is stop being jealous of the people who understood that when Bitcoin was still a fucking dollar.
Mhm.
For me, that would have been the absolute hardest time to see it. That's why it's such, as much of an ego test Bitcoin is, it's still an IQ test as well. I don't know a lot of idiots that are willingly adopting this thing, but I know some idiots that like the idea of making money. And if they find out that this is a relevant path towards making money, then they might drop everything and go after it. But that's what I love about Bitcoin so much. It's not a get rich quick scheme. So it's a turnoff to a lot of junkies with that mindset. Like, I need it tomorrow. I need it tomorrow. Well, this ain't for you. And you're going to slowly watch people strengthen their financial futures over time while you fall behind, while your boat rolls backwards. You're watching everybody else get ahead and wondering how. And the answer will not reveal itself to you until you humbly submit to what Bitcoin is doing and what it is beginning to enforce. So, with that being the case, In the future, I see you getting real freaky with the lighting over
Trying some things out. Yeah.
there. In the future, man, do you feel like we're going to calculate our lives in dollars or Bitcoin? Because I feel like right now we are so baptized into this dollar system that it's hard to get ourselves out of the idea of, okay, okay, this costs X amount of dollars. Bitcoin is worth that X amount of dollars. We got to stop looking at Bitcoin in general of in dollars. Like, okay, one Bitcoin is worth 90,000, but it's like, how do I wrap my head around a dollar not even being real? It's like, okay, well, what am I measuring? I got to go back to Satoshis. I got to measure the Satoshis. I got to figure out what each one of these fractions of these units are worth and what I'm willing to do for it. Am I willing to wash somebody's car for a couple Satoshis? Or do I need 1,000 Satoshis? Like, what am I going to need to provide the same service I'm providing? Like, and it's like, are we gonna always have to revert back to dollars to measure shit? Or is that gonna vary based off what jurisdiction we're in? Like if we're in Japan, are we gonna use yens to measure shit? Like what is that gonna look like when we start remeasuring or change the measuring stick that we use to value goods and services?
It's going to be a shock for a lot of people. I'm still getting used to it. I have to think like, well, what is it going to be like when I'm 50? Of course, I'm still thinking in terms of dollars now, but I'm thinking like by the time I'm 50, it's probably going to look something like this. So I need to start training my brain now for when it's like that, because you don't want to be still thinking in terms of dollars by the time the system fully takes over and you haven't structured your life to this new system. Like you say, we're not measuring in dollars, or at least not totally. It's Satoshis or maybe something completely new. So I would tell people it's just building the habit now of measuring. Okay, like the whole system that we live in is Bitcoin and it's connected to this. So I say start thinking of it now, and you don't want to be running like a chicken with your head cut off 10 years later. So if you're 18-year-old out here now, you want to be thinking 20 years ahead, like, oh, okay, like probably going to be something like this. It's with every new invention that changes the world, that revolutionizes the world, whether it been with fire, the discovery of fire, all the way up until, when trains were invented and cars and cell phones. And when cell phones started to become more popular, the people who thought ahead, like, you know what, I'm going to invest in companies that actually make the chips and the processors for the cell phones, because they saw, okay, it went from 100,000 people with a cell phone to 500,000 to a million people with a cell phone. The internet. And they said it was a scam, but you see more and more people getting AOL. See more and more people getting broadband. Like, I'm gonna invest in those companies that do that. And like you say, it's being able to have that faith to say, you know what, this is gonna be the new system. I don't know exactly when it's gonna take hold, but I can have a rough estimate. Say, you know what, I'm gonna start living my life like this. So going back to your original question, like I said, I think most people are probably gonna either thinking, like I say, stable coins or Bitcoins, but there will be people who think in terms of Bitcoin. And like I say, those are going to be the people who are going to be able to get ahead of the curve. But it's being able to accept that, look, it's like dollars are probably going to be a thing of the past. People say it's not. People said, oh, this was a scam. This was a scam. But eventually, our entire system changed. And like I say, like now we're using cell phones. We got the internet. We're all driving cars. So I would tell people you just have to look at it in terms of that, in terms of every great, piece of technology that changed human life. Bitcoin is no exception, but I would say it's that, along with AI, quantum computing, is probably the last big innovations in human society that are really going to transform our lives to the next level. I don't know if we're all going to go into machines or anything, but I'll tell you this, look at the impact that Bitcoin has already had. And, look at our debit cards, that's digital currency right there. So Bitcoin is no different. We're already used to using digital currency. Like I say, like I tell people, you really think the bank or your job is sending $1,000 when, like, they add up all the time you work? You think they're really sending that? No, it's all just code in a bank. It makes you think, it's like, well, does that money really exist? You know.
I remember we went to Golden Sun Jewelry Store a couple years back, and I asked Gary, the main jeweler there, I asked him like, "Hey man, do you would you accept if I wanted to buy one of these watches? Would you accept Bitcoin, which roughly was around $30,000 at the time?" And he said, "Absolutely not. I think that everybody who's in it are going to jail." And that was his sentiment back in 2021, I want to say, when it took off, you know. And yeah, the guy was fully convinced that everybody in Bitcoin would be going to jail. And here we are now with all of the validation that a person could ask for. You have governmental validation, congressional validation, institutional validation,
Mm-hmm.
corporate validation, mainstream validation, like geopolitical validation. It
Mm-hmm.
has all of the validation that it could need. And when you mentioned the dollars becoming a thing of the past, it made me think like, well, fuck, it's actually a miracle that we even have an option outside of governments right now. How fucking wicked is that? When you think about that, Cap, I want you to really seriously think about that, bro. You and I both right now have an option outside of government
Our
that we
ancestors,
can use to exchange value with one another.
our ancestors would think like, man, this is
How did
amazing.
y'all pull this off?
They wouldn't believe
How
it.
how did y'all pull this off? Because I'm pretty sure, like, our ancestors, especially the ones brought on over here on the transatlantic slave ships. I'm pretty fucking sure that in the back of their minds, they was thinking like, man, I would love to be able to do this outside of their system. Especially when we started trying to get on our feet as Black Americans, Black Wall Street, starting to try to get on our feet and still having to play around with their money because
Mm-hmm.
you really didn't have too much of a choice outside. Like, I mean, maybe you could accumulate some gold, but again, like, especially in the 20th century, it was very difficult to even trade gold. So that's why we left it with banks. We left it with third party, uh, you know, custodians to basically hold on to it for us because the wave was dollars, the wave was fiat. It was like the most liquid thing we had ever seen. It trade hands so easily, so fast. And the fact that we even have something outside of government is a fucking miracle. We pulled it off and it's been working for 17 years unscathed. That alone is is worth crying over, bro. It's a come to Jesus moment. And the fact that we're already there, bro, and we're looking down on earth like, look at the minions. Look at the fucking minions not knowing any better. When will they figure it out? Will they ever figure it out? Will they just go extinct? And all I'm trying to do with this podcast, the only thing I'm trying to accomplish is bridging that gap between dilettantes, people who just don't know no fucking better, and bridge that gap and help them get across the bridge on the other side of at least competence. It's
Mm-hmm.
all going to start with competence. And this is not an overnight process. This is our commitment as a brand, our commitment with this podcast. From a spiritual standpoint, we're not talking about anything technical. From a spiritual standpoint, I want you to understand that Bitcoin is the answer. It is the light. It is the way. If there was a way that could be weighed, Bitcoin is that way. I truly believe that, and that's why I'm dedicating my life to this message. It's giving me purpose. It's giving me something to drive and strive and continue to try to conquer and continue to be patient and believing in a better tomorrow. That's really all you can ask for, man. So that's where I'm at with it. I know right now we're seeing just the reckless results of how money printing is just changing society in general. one article we came across was in regards to foreclosures here. So I want to just read this off. It says more Americans are losing their homes as foreclosures jump 20%. A new housing market report shows that home foreclosures in the United States have risen by 20% compared to the previous year. Economists say rising interest rates and continued affordability issues are putting pressure on homeowners. States with the fastest growing population and highest cost of living are experiencing the most significant increases. Many families who purchased homes during the peak of the market are now facing higher monthly payments and limited refinancing options. Analysts warn that if economic conditions do not improve, foreclosure rates could climb through the roof the remainder of the year. That is obviously, not a surprise. Home ownership is a fucking joke. Basically, the fact that you call yourself buying something, but you still have to pay a third party essentially rent. And if you don't pay that rent, you could be evicted from the thing that you bought that you're supposed to own.
And
So
property.
you don't fucking own it. And that's like I talk to grown-ups all the time. I talk to real grown fucking adults in their 40s and their 50s, and they tell me about their mortgages and their homes, and they tell me I should buy a home. And I look at them and I gotta kind of smile, agree, and go do whatever the fuck I was gonna do in the first place. Whenever I don't feel like having that back and forth, like, hey, with all your conviction in the world you grew up in, you really felt like this was a good idea. You felt like you felt like buying this home was the right move at the time. And then 7 years later, you changed your mind. You like, hey, I really don't want to be here. I really got somewhere else I would like to be, or I just don't appreciate this home the way I did 7 years ago. Well, duh, things change. Your values change. And that's no different than with your home. It might get old. New things get old all the time. So
Hmm.
you're going to be a whole different fucking person in 30 years. And it's only about to get worse as they change these terms. Now they're talking about 50-year mortgages, bro.
That's
Like this is a
slavery.
real thing that they're introducing. Like it's a more desperate approach. What they're saying, like, hey, we're gonna make housing even more affordable. Well, we see what the Affordable Housing Act did for society. It was a net negative. It was the worst thing that could happen because yeah, you made housing more affordable for everybody, which inadvertently made it unaffordable for everybody because it drove up the prices of the limited amount of homes that were available at the time. And if you got every Tom, Dick, and Harry able to fill out an application to get approved for a home, just because they put their name on the application, that is going to lead to dramatic inflation of assets like homes. And I appreciate what Satoshi did by creating a system that inadvertently punishes that recklessness. Like there are real consequences to the type of recklessness that governments have been involved in over the past five, six, 700,000 years. You go back to the Roman Empire, 1,000 plus years. Like this shit had to stop at some point. It had to reach a frontier, which we couldn't take it no more. And I'm pretty sure this is it. This is probably the final frontier of humanity on a currency perspective, because
Hmm.
this is our first real currency, and all we have to do is protect it.
And own it, like you say. I tell people, if you truly own something, you don't owe anybody. Look at the world of streaming. You notice, like right now, I have VHS tapes of many different classic Disney films. I own these tapes, and one day there will be no more in circulation. So if I had a VCR, I don't have to pay a streaming fee, a monthly subscription. I can play these movies whenever I want. The scary thing is that if these companies were to say, hey, we're going to take all of our films off of streaming, well, then you don't have any other place to get them from. You're forced to get them from there. you're at the mercy of these companies, what makes you think, well, damn, if I can't find it on streaming, everything is streaming, does it even really exist? I don't even like. Of course, I've seen the film, but it's like I don't even own this film. When we had VHS tapes, you owned the film. When you had DVDs, you owned the film. It makes you think about our money. We don't even own our money as citizens. You know, when FDR took us off of the gold standard, that was the end of it. Um, Especially during the crash of the late 1920s and 30s. And let me correct myself, like when they changed and when they started seizing the gold, Nixon took us off of the gold standard in 1970, if I'm correct. And that
1971,
was
yeah.
the final nail in the coffin. So like I say, from VHS tapes to look at music. We don't even own the music we're listening to. You have to go through Spotify, which licenses the music from the major labels. But if I have a CD, whether it be Jay-Z all the way to Willie Nelson, I still own that. And one day, like I say, like a lot of these cars, they don't even make with CD ports. You have to have a streaming subscription, or go on YouTube or something, and you don't own the music anymore. They've taken ownership away from us. Like I say, true ownership is not owing anybody. You have a piece of it. And Bitcoin is no exception. It's like you say, it's the only real currency because you actually own it. It's not controlled by any one entity. And that's true ownership. Like I say, if you own your car outright, pay the cash, you do own it. But if you have to pay a car note, or at least know you owe the dealership and the bank. Same thing with the house. Same thing, with the buy now, pay later system that has arisen in our society. That's just a new form of debt. And like I say, if you don't own something outright, then you can't call yourself really standing on anything. And Bitcoin has given us a way to have true ownership in our lives as citizens, especially in the area that matters most, and that is in finance. Everything goes back to being able to provide for yourself financially in society. And what I'm amazed at is that people don't really see it that way when it comes to Bitcoin. I tell people it's a bigger game going on here. Like I say, ownership is everything, but you have to do it the right way. And now they've gotten it to where, like I said earlier, a few small corporations have bought up all the houses and now are charging sky high premiums for these houses. Same thing with entertainment. Look at the deal with Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery. If anybody is familiar with the recent developments in that story, if that deal goes through, then almost half of all streaming will be controlled by just one company in our society, especially when it comes to film. So you have to look at it through that lens. Bitcoin is helping us give power back to the working class by actually owning currency, by actually owning the thing that our entire lives revolve around.
Man, you just said something so fucking profound, right? Actually owning currency, because you would think that, okay, if I put $1 in my pocket, somebody handed it to me or I found it on the ground, when I put it in my pocket or you put it in your pocket, you would think you own it, right? And you don't. It can sit right in your pocket and they can take it away from you sitting in the pocket. It's the ultimate fucking sorcery, like fucking witchcraft. Like, they talk about fucking turning lead into gold and shit. Alchemists. That is the ultimate alchemy. To be able to even create energy units out of no energy and move stuff in society, that has chaotic consequences. And it don't seem like it to the people that's closest to that printer, because when they print those dollars, that's when that dollar is hot off the press. That's as hot as it's gonna be. That's
Hmm.
as capable as it's gonna be, because the longer it takes to trickle down and trickle down and trickle down and trickle down and land in your wallet, by the time it gets in your wallet, it's worth significantly less than when it was hot off the press. So when you talk about ownership, I'm convinced that Bitcoin is the only thing that us as human beings can truly, truly own. Everything else can be taken away from you. Your homes can be taken away from you by men with guns. A military can march you right out the fucking house right now. Your cars, not even just the fact that you renting all of this stuff, your furniture, your car, your house, you renting it from the government. Not even the fact you renting all of this, but the fact that with force, any of it can be taken away from you at any time. So the only thing you can truly own could never possibly be anything physical. And by Bitcoin being something you can store in your memory, you can only own Bitcoin outside of your own memory. It's really profound and really fascinating when you think about it. And I really got to use a certain tone when I approach this because I want to drive home that this is not a violent revolution that we are experiencing. This is going to be the most peaceful revolution you've ever seen. This is the only revolution that don't require us to put on clothes and grab pitchforks and grab and make signs and go out and be seen in public. We don't got to do that. All we got to do is vote with our dollars. Use your dollars to vote. Not even just dollars. If you got something sitting around your house, I got a battery charger right here. What's this word from Facebook Marketplace? If there's a human being willing to give me $10 for this, I can turn that $10 to Bitcoin, essentially turning this into Bitcoin. And so, not even just voting with my dollars, I can vote with all the material substance around me. I can vote with my service, vote with my willpower. I can serve others for Bitcoin. I can deliberately make that choice. And when I do make that choice, all of a sudden I'm snatching power away from them, and power is going back to the sovereign individual. So owning Bitcoin is the only thing that's going to offer you as the individual true sovereignty. And your family can never be free until you are free, because those are ultimately people that we care about the most and the people that we want to take care of. But
Mm.
any last words of wisdom, Kat, before we wrap this up?
Well, if anybody's ever heard the elite's new catchphrase, "You'll own nothing and be happy," don't believe it. Ownership is key. You know, actually owning your house, actually owning the land it's on. Because you could own your house, but you don't even own the land it's on. You know, owning the entertainment that you get pleasure from. you know that's the key thing about Bitcoin, and I know that was the first thing in Satoshi's mind. How can I give ownership of currency itself back to the people? Like I say, you have to go back to the policies instituted by FDR during the Great Depression, of how they started seizing gold and were punishing people for actually, having, because that's what was causing a lot of the crashes. The bank closure was fear. People were pulling their money out of the banks. People were pulling their gold out of the banks. And Nixon, he sealed the deal in 1970, because when money was backed by gold, the people actually had more power than the government. They say, look, if we take all our gold, like I say, like, then
Mm-hmm.
that's the end of it. That's why they said, any dollars before, the Great Depression, they say this dollar is redeemable in gold. Now, what does it say? This is a Federal Reserve note. Keyword is a Federal Reserve note. This isn't even really true government money. It should say this is a United States currency, but it doesn't. This is a
Right.
Federal Reserve note. That's
That's all
why
it is.
Bitcoin was based around decentralization. No one entity can control it. I can control it, you can control it, but no one entity can control it. And that's the power of it. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. It actually gives you ownership. Ownership is the only thing that matters in this life, in our society. But most of us don't really have it. Bitcoin has given us a way to take that back, so that, hey, I own this Bitcoin. Now I have more leverage. I can do something that the next man can't. I can actually stand up against the government. Hey, I got 1,000 Bitcoin. That's how much power I got. But it's real power. It's not fake. And like I say, it's a real status symbol to say, like, well, damn, we can't push that person around. They have 1,000 Bitcoin. If they have this stable coin, we can, because we control the stable coin. They could shut it off, like in China. Their social credit score system, they track everything from the content you look at online, because they're a surveillance state. They track you jaywalking if you break, small social infractions, and they can shut you off of the entire system and make your life a living hell. And you have to ask yourself, do you really want that? Do you? And think about that one word: ownership. That is the name of the game.
Hey, you said it best here, man. And that's what we're gonna continue to drive home on this with this podcast and on this channel. So if you haven't already, man, please make sure you subscribe for more educational and empowering content around giving your life to Bitcoin, giving up these earthly games, man, and we find ourselves stuck playing and seeking a better tomorrow. Share this video with a friend if you found it helpful. Like it so help us out in the algorithm. We can build a stronger community together. But other than that, we appreciate you guys for joining. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.